Hi guys, it's Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. Today's video is going to be my March reading wrap up. These are the books that I finished reading in March, and I don't have that many. I actually have 6 physical books, and as you guys can see, they're pretty tiny. They're not like big lengthy books, and I listened to 2 short stories on Audible, 2 original stories from Audible, just because most of the month, 2 weeks out of this whole month, I've been reading Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and this is a big chunker of a book, and I struggled at the beginning. The first, I want to say 150-200 pages, I struggled so much. I read this much in the past 2 weeks, which is, I mean, I tend to read pretty fast, but this has taken me forever. So I still have this little bit left. I do have to film today just so I can post this video, and I couldn't delay it until I finished reading this book. So this book and my thoughts on this will be for April, but that's why I only read, I say only because I tend to read a lot more than just 6 books, but it is what it is. So I'm going to get started. Of course, I didn't check my Goodreads, so I can tell you guys where I'm at right now reading goal wise, but everything will be like always in the description box, so you guys know what I finished. So I am participating in the A to Z reading challenge, in which I'm trying to read a book the title starts with a letter from the alphabet, and I did complete that. I completed 2 letters only from what I have left. And for the 52 book club, it's a book club where you're trying to read 52 prompts. I completed 5 prompts, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm just gonna get started. For my A to Z reading challenge, the first letter I completed was I, and for that I read In the Woods by Tana French. This is like a murder mystery type novel set in Ireland, and I did have the privilege to go to Ireland about 3 years ago. It's a lovely country, so I was really excited to have this book set in Ireland, and I don't want to say that I really enjoyed it because I was really mad at how this book ended. I thought it was a great story, but okay, so it's kind of like a dual timeline. There were these kids that disappeared a long time ago, and then something happens in the woods again, and people are trying to make a connection to what happened many years ago, like in the 80s. So we go back and forth trying to learn what was it that happened back then, and if it's connected to what's happening now. And it's a really good book. I feel like it doesn't look like it's very big, but this book is over 400 pages. So like the pages are really thin. But I feel like this book could have been a little bit shorter than the 425 pages that it is. Maybe 50 pages less or so. I kind of struggled to get into it at the beginning, but once I was into it, I was really into it until the end, where I was just really upset. If you guys have read this book, you guys kind of know what I mean. Just because I feel like if I say it, I'm gonna give away spoilers. So I'm just gonna stop talking and let you guys know that this is a good book. Just the ending for me wasn't satisfying enough. You guys know, like when people say that when they finish a book, they just want to throw it against the wall. I had never experienced that feeling until I read this book, until I finished this book. I already have the likeness, which is a follow-up to this book. I don't think it's necessarily a sequel. It's just a follow-up. I think there's 6 books, I think, set in this world, but I don't think you need to read them in order. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, I'm not sure, but knowing me, I need to read them in order. But anyway, really enjoyed this book. I would recommend, even though I didn't really loved it. This book also completed the prompt for a book published by Penguin. You guys see the little penguin there, so that's that. And the second letter I completed in the A to Z challenge was for the letter P, and I read Persuasion by Jane Austen. I have never been a person who loves classics. I just don't know why, but I wanted to read this book because one of my favorite movies is The Lake House with Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves, and there's a reference to this book in that movie. And then I saw it on Book Outlet. It was super cheap, and it was a really cute cover edition. So I figured as a book lover, I like to have pretty covers. And I feel like having a pretty cover of a classic makes me seem smarter. But anyway, this book follows this couple that for one way or another, destiny kind of tears them apart. And then several years later, they meet again. So I really enjoyed this book actually. It didn't read like a classic to me. I tend to read, I feel like classics tend to read kind of boring and kind of like an old English type writing, but this didn't feel like that. I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend if you haven't read it. Oh, and I forgot, for the 52 book club, this book fit the prompt for a book by a deceased author. Jane Austen died a long time ago. And those are all the letters for the A to Z reading challenge. Now moving on to the 52 book club, the rest of the prompts that I finished. I also finished the prompt number 8, a book in the 900s Dewey Decimal System. And I had to look it up because I didn't know what that meant. And luckily, this book that I have here fits into that category. It's usually like biographies type books, and a lot of geographical, most of them are like geographical memoirs, geographies. I think that's what it's described as. But when I looked at this guy, I found that this was in the 900s Dewey Decimal. I will insert a picture so you guys can believe me. But anyway, I am talking about Mitch Albom's Finding Chika. This is a memoir. I love Mitch Albom. Granted, I've only read 3 books, I think, by him. Tuesdays with Morrie, The 5 People You Meet in Heaven, and then the next 5 People You Meet in Heaven, and then this is my 4th book by him, and I have loved all of them. Mitch Albom has a way of writing that, even though his books are all like not only physically small but also very short, he has a way of writing, telling stories that don't need any fluff. They read super fast because as it is, the book is not very big. Like you have quite a bit of spacing within the words. But this is a story about his story about adopting a girl from Haiti whose mother died at birth, and her father kind of just, after the mom died, he kind of didn't look for his daughter. You guys remember the earthquake that happened in Haiti a few years ago? She was born right after that. So he adopts this little girl and she ends up dying a few years later. It was so moving and so lovely, and it's not a spoiler because it talks about that, but he talks about the story of having her, of going through the process of adopting her, meeting her biological father who just didn't fight for her. He didn't go looking for her after she was born and the mom died. So very, very truly moving story. Highly recommend. It didn't read like a memoir. It actually felt just like another fiction book, but this was based on, true events. Highly recommend. I loved it. The next prompt that I finished for the 52 book club was an educational read, and I consider this book educational because I learned a lot, and it is Black Klansman by Ron Stallworth. This is also a memoir, another memoir, and I consider this an educational book because I learned a lot about the KKK and how the organization works and thinks. And it was just very interesting. Also, Ron Stallworth is, he's not here from El Paso, but he lived here for a long time. So he's kind of like well known here in town. So also a book that's very skinny. They made a movie based on this book. I haven't seen it. I cannot wait to see it. And the only reason why I bought it was because I saw it on Book Outlet and I was like, oh, it's kind of a small book. Let me get it. But yeah, I read super fast, learned a lot, really enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to watch the movie. I don't think I said it. This follows a black detective who infiltrates the KKK and makes them look like idiots, basically. And the last prompt that I completed for the 52 book club was prompt number 42, and this was completed by the Audible short story that I read. It was called This Is Not Your Fault. And this was a short story. It was maybe about an hour long, an hour and a half. And this follows a couple. Oh, did I say the prompt? An epistolary. and the book is, the audio listen is called This Is Not Your Fault. And we follow this couple who is getting a divorce, who's going through a divorce during the time of COVID. And we follow kind of how the stress of COVID kind of tore this couple apart, and their therapist has them write like a diary so that they can put their feelings into words. So we're kind of listening back and forth from each person's point of views, not only journal entries, but also the emails back and forth to their lawyers, and from their lawyers to them. So that's what makes it an epistolary. But anyway, I really enjoyed this book. This has a really low, well, I think it's a low rating. It's a 3.0 rating on Goodreads, which I think it's kind of low. But I really enjoyed it. A lot of people were giving it like 2 stars. I'm in the minority where I gave it a good rating, but I liked that the story, it was kind of anticlimactic, but it had an open-ended ending where the wife, kind of as she's going through writing in her journal and writing all these experiences and feelings, she kind of is double thinking the divorce at the end. So you're kind of like left thinking, will they go through with the divorce, or will they give their marriage another chance? So I found that kind of encouraging. For both, it was kind of sad and kind of stressful. I wonder how many couples, how many families did struggle through COVID, and how many people decided to separate because of all the stress that COVID brought onto their lives. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and it fit this prompt. So those are all the prompts that I finished. Now for the books that I have left that didn't fit any category, I'll just go ahead and talk about the next Audible original story, which was The Getaway. I forget who wrote this book, but it's narrated by Cara Mera? No. Rooney Mara's sister, the other actress. I can't remember her name. But this book was kind of a letdown. We follow this girl who decides to go on this kind of sort of retreat. This is a mystery thriller type story. It was also very short. It was about 2 hours long. And she is tricked into going into this kind of retreat place. And everything was really good, and it was feeling very atmospheric, and I was really into it, and it was kind of getting intense. But then when it's revealed the motive of the antagonist and why he's doing this, I was like, really? Like, that's the reason that you're giving this bad guy, like that's the reason for him doing all this? Like, that is so dumb. So I felt like really anticlimactic. I honestly didn't care for it. It would have been a 4-star read if it wasn't for the stupid reason that he was doing what he was doing. Like, come on. So I gave it 3 stars because I enjoyed it for the most part. But like I said, like at the end of it, it was just it was a dumb reason to be doing what he was doing. The next book that I read was Morning Star by Pierce Brosnan. Pierce Brown. This is the last book of the Red Rising trilogy. I can't say much about this because it is the ending of the trilogy. Red Rising is basically kind of like the Hunger Games mixed with Lord of the Flies and Harry Potter. Like I said, we follow this socioeconomic classes that are based around color. The reds are basically the lowest ones, and the golds are like the highest. It's like the capital, right? The people from the capital. So one of the reds infiltrates and becomes a gold. He's transformed into a gold, so he can lead a rebellion and kind of destroy the government, who are being, not very nice to the rest of the society. So this is the ending to that. It was really good, action-packed, very, very much an adult series. I thought that this was going to be a young adult series, but this is very violent, like more violent than the Hunger Games, more violent, I think, than Lord of the Flies. Like, it has very descriptive, violent scenes. It makes it for a very intense read, but I liked it. Really, really enjoyed it. Highly recommend this series. It's really good. The last book that I read was It's Not Supposed to Be This Way by Lisa Turkhurst. Lisa Turkhurst is a Christian living author. She writes nonfiction books, and I love her books. I've read 3 or 4 of her books, and I always find them to be very relatable, very uplifting. I always feel like, what am I gonna have? Like, my struggle when I read like books, like Christian living books, is that I don't find them to be relatable, because the author gives a lot of examples, like of a married mother type, examples. And I like that Lisa Turker's appeals to everyone, I think, whether you're married or single or have kids or don't. I feel like she's just really good about just uplifting women in any kind of stage in their life, and this book was no different. I really enjoyed it. If you need something to lift you up, something to learn and encourage you, I suggest you pick up any of her books. I think all of her books are great. So that is everything that I read for the month of March. Like I said, don't be surprised if for the month of April I have like 8 or 9 books, and one of them is a huge chunker that is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, because like I'm about to finish it in the next couple of days. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoy, and happy reading.